Hello, I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this webinar today. How do you go about attracting clients to business advisory services? If you have any questions during the webinar, can you please type them into chat? Or if you're watching this webinar at a later time and you have a question, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. It's time for business advisory services. It certainly is. The CommBank Accounting Market Pulse forecast that was released in May this year, a few weeks ago, has identified that only 5% of Australian accounting firms will not be diversifying during 2021-22. Only 5%. It's going to be very interesting to see if the 95% who have indicated that they will be diversifying services actually go ahead and do so. Business advisory services was identified as the top rating service line in the CommBank consultants surveys of accounting firms from all over Australia. And in that report, they had identified that some firms were leading firms. This was based on some initial 5 questions that were asked. And 81% of those leading firms indicated that they would be offering business advisory services as the main lead product to be developed or expanded during 21-22. And 67% of the firms that the Commonwealth Bank referred to as lagging firms, based on those 5 initial questions, also identified that they would be offering business advisory services to their clients. A great result. And I hope that every firm in Australia is able to progressively implement these strategies. And the team at ESS BizTools are here to assist you to do that, because this is why we have spent years and lots of hours in the development of our product packages to assist accountants like you to be able to deliver these types of services for the benefit of your clients. So the scene is definitely set. It's taking a long time to get to here. The CommBank reports have been talking about business advisory services for the last 6 years. So where do you start in communicating to your clients that your accounting firm is now going to deliver some different services? I think the first step is you need to classify your clients. What industries are your clients in? Because if you're going to deliver, you need to prepare your team and yourselves as partners and directors of firms on the clients that you have. Sure, you might attract some other clients in the future, but at the very beginning, you will make your name in the marketplace. You will gain your reputation by offering outstanding diversified services to your clients. So let's look at what might be happening in your client land. Do they offer credit? If so, they're going to have debtors problems, aren't they? Do they export? If so, they may be spending money on export market development activities. They need to have spent more than $15,000 in the year, and they can then make a claim for the export market development grant. Do they tinker or do they research in their sheds, on their farms, underneath their houses, or on their computer? If so, they could be interested in a research and development incentive rebate. Are they wanting to scale up, irrespective of what their current turnover is? It might only be $500,000, it might be $3 million. It might already be $7 million, but they're wanting to scale up to grow their business. I had a phone call yesterday from a gentleman that I assisted 5 or 6 years ago, and he told me that his turnover last year was a bit over $600,000, and this year is going to be $16 million. And he predicts that 21-22 could be $40 million. He's got real scaling up issues. He's aware of that. You've got to be very careful as a business grows at that pace. But the leadership team is capable of meeting the challenges. How would you react to that client situation? Because he's now asked me to be one of his key advisors. So how do you service clients who are wanting to scale up and grow their businesses? You got any clients that are going to need extra funding? And if they need extra funding, can they borrow the money? Do they have spare assets that they can offer as security to a bank or to other lenders? And are they prepared to issue personal guarantees? Or will they be interested in looking at the opportunity that the government has now given small, medium enterprises in Australia up to a turnover of $25 million to be able to raise capital as a crowdsourced funding equity raising company? Or if they're one of these, what I've called tinker or research orientated type businesses, they could utilize the early stage innovation company opportunity. And the real benefit there is there's a couple of very significant carrots to investors to invest in these types of businesses. So do they know about the capital raising opportunities? Do you know enough in your team? That's very important because you've got to be able to talk the talk on these issues. And perhaps that's one area that you need to refresh. So let's go into step 2. What are their characteristics? Let's go through some of the businesses that you may have, tradie businesses. There's thousands of these in Australia, and manufacturers, nearly as many of them too, isn't there? So what sort of services do they need from you? Well, they all charge out their labor. They have charge out rates. You could help them calculate so that they take into account the productivity percentages being achieved. And they take into account the overhead expenses. And they've really got a target of profit built into the charge out rates. And if they're going to do that, you should really be talking to them about having regular financial accounts prepared monthly or at the latest quarterly, so that you can compare how they're actually going in the field as compared to what the charge out rate calculator indicated. And these discussions can be held in a business review meeting, one of the most important meetings that a business can hold, where all the leadership team are present and analyze the financial performance. And you, as the accountant, should be the facilitator, because most of your clients will not have someone internally who can actually organize this regularly on a month-by-month basis. All businesses need a business plan. In fact, we're at the start of a new financial year. Great time for a new business plan. And when you consider the problems that thousands of businesses have still got around Australia, as we see this latest round of lockdowns and state borders being shut, everyone needs to be reviewing their business plan. Debtors management. Are your clients who are offering credit, and a lot of these people will be, of course, tradies and manufacturers, do they have an effective debtor system? Or is this something that you can offer them? Do they know what their debtors days outstanding is, and are they taking steps to try to improve it? And what about a benchmarking review, utilizing the www.benchmarking.com.au reports, which you can subscribe to and utilize to talk to your clients, to highlight to them where they vary from the peer groups that have been utilized within those benchmarking.com reports. There's a few things to think about for your tradie and manufacturer clients, isn't there? And then you need to be communicating about these things. Oh, and I forgot one, the Personal Property Securities Register. I don't particularly like this legislation, but you need to be familiar with it. And it worries me that when I talk to a lot of accountants, I get stares back at me. I get stared at and saying, well, what are you talking about, Peter? Well, this is important legislation. Whether I agree with it or it doesn't really matter. The government of the day, a past government, introduced this legislation, and businesses need to register their assets if they want to protect them, especially if those assets are going to be located on someone else's premises. Please familiarize yourself with it, because it's a real trap for tradies who have tools and machinery and bobcats and trucks and what have you stored on other people's property. If a liquidator is appointed, they could lose it. You wouldn't want to be having that conversation with your client, would you? If you hadn't told them about it. Professionals, let's look at your professional clients. They also have charge out calculators, whether they're architects, accountants, surveyors, lawyers, they're all charging out time. So you can go through and review that for them as well. Very similar to the tradies and manufacturers, except they might not be doing any markups on external purchases they're making on behalf of clients. Professionals don't tend to do that. Some might, okay. They need regular financial accounts so they can have the business review meetings to see how everything's working out. Because it can make a big difference if the initial calculations of the charge out rates have been done at an 80% productivity and they're only achieving 60, especially if it's 4 or 5 people involved in that group. So you need the business review meetings to see how they're actually performing. Debtors management, same issue. Business plan. What about retailers or wholesalers? This is an area where, of course, they're dealing with different products. And within our system, we define products as the stars, the high volume and the high markups. Retailers and wholesalers pray that they can have a store full of those products, but that's not the way the world works, because they also have cash cows, products that have got high volumes, but low markups. But you need them in most businesses. Customers come looking for them to buy the milk, to buy the newspaper, to buy basic items. And then you got problem stocks. Might have been last year's fashions, no longer in fashion this year, especially if it's ladies' fashion. So they might have had fairly high volumes at one stage and high markups. Now all that's changed. And then you got the dregs, the things that shouldn't be in the store in the first place. Low volume and low markups. Now it's how all those items mix within a environment that determine what the result's going to be for that store or wholesaler. You can utilize the material which we've developed within ESS BIZTOOLS, based on material originally produced by Andrew Geddes at Financial Management Research Centre, which with Andrew's approval, we've modified, so that you can better guide your client. The sort of work you would be doing if you were the full-time chief financial officer or accountant within your client. I know, because I was a full-time CFO, company secretary of a listed public company. And the analysis of what was going on in our retail and wholesale operations was vital. And trying to be able to make a contribution to the small leadership team running those individual businesses as to what they might do by specials, by special promotions, all sorts of things. how the display was set out in the shops, trying to encourage customers to buy in a slightly different manner so that the business could earn a profit. What about stock control? It's partly what I've just been talking about. Debtors management. Everyone's got debtors. Regular financial accounts so we can have a business review meeting to see how the retailer or wholesaler is going. And a business plan. A lot of these things are similar, slightly different because they're different businesses, but this one's different. If you've got any clients who you might classify as being a researcher or an inventor, someone who keeps on thinking of different ideas of doing things, well, they could be eligible for the research and development incentive rebate, but they need to be a company. You need to be communicating with your clients to make them aware of what they can do. They could get a government grant. Accelerating commercialization grant is a grant of up to $1 million. And some people scoff at that and say, oh, that's too big for me. But there's 6 or 7 companies get that every month, that $1 million grant. There's a lot of others only get a couple of $100,000. The company also has to be able to contribute 50%. So you've got to match the contribution. And those sort of companies need to have a business plan, budgets and cash flow forecasts, predictive accounting. That's what we're now calling it. And they could be very interested in the early stage innovation company capital opportunities, because that's why the government formed these companies, because there is carrots that can be offered to investors to invest in these types of companies. They get a 20% of their investment as a tax rebate. There are limits for retail investors and sophisticated investors. And if they hold the shares for longer than 12 months, they don't have to pay capital gains tax. That's why they're attractive to investors who have an awareness of what's happening. You could also talk to your clients who have got spare money in their superannuation funds, looking for some investments. They might be interested in looking at some of these opportunities that might emerge from this group that I've called researchers and inventors. Have you got any of them? What about businesses that are growing and need funding? They need a business plan, first and foremost, that clearly identifies where they're going. Who's the leadership team? Who are the directors? What's the business? What's the strategies? How are they going to implement the strategies? And how are they going to fund the business? Where's the cash coming from? Budgets and cash flow forecasts, which is looking at how they're going to go. Those companies may well be very interested in trying to raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period from crowdsourced funding equity raising. Or as an early stage innovation company. Within ESS BIZTOOLS, we've developed the SME Needs Analysis, which is also a modification of a document originally prepared by Andrew Geddes at the Financial Management Research Centre. With Andrew's approval, we have modified it. But let's look at some of the issues that are covered within this document, which is a marketing tool that you can sit down and communicate with your clients. And it's got some examples within the document that your client might look at and say, well, that's what I need. I want you to do this for me. Business analysis and interpretation of financial results. Or are they just given the P&L account as part of the tax return asked to sign here? That's not the way to deliver business advisory services on a month-by-month basis. They need information on things like the ratio analysis. They clearly want to understand debtors management, because debtors days outstanding can be a huge problem. Cash flow management is looking at inventory, work in progress, debtors, creditors. How does all that fit together? And is the business going to have sufficient cash flow to be able to pay its debts and run its activities? Budgets and cash flow forecasts. Does your client need more assistance in that area? What about customers? Over the years, I've undertaken a number of customer group meetings whereby I've in fact been the one that listened to the customers of a business and prepared a report for the client on what the customers thought. We've also organized customer review meetings of half a dozen customers to come together and have a cup of tea or a coffee every 6 months and give feedback to the business. You could help utilize that. Competitors analysis. Some of your clients won't feel comfortable, won't have the time in sitting down and doing an analysis on competitors. I think it's a good idea to do it every 3 or 6 months. Have a look at what the competitors are saying on their websites and what they're putting out into the general media and newsletters they're sending out, and give some feedback to the perceived trends that they might be on. Because if you were the CFO sitting in a listed company, that's one of the roles I suspect you or someone within your team would have, to keep the boss informed of what else is going on. Normally the CEOs have got a good idea what their competitors are doing, but at times you will find bits and pieces of information that are in accounting reports that CEOs in lots of cases don't tend to read. They're too busy with other things. Business modeling. What could happen if we did some promotion to increase the number of visitors to our stores and we entice them to spend a little bit more money and we fiddle with the gross profit percentage? What would that do to the bottom line? I hope I'm giving you some ideas of what you might be able to start talking to your clients about. Corporate governance. Those of your clients who are running companies should have a clear understanding of corporate governance. Within ESS BIZTOOLS, we've got articles on corporate governance, so you could make that available to them. And especially if they're in companies that are expanding, growing, scaling up, they ultimately will end up with having some external people appointed to their boards. They don't want to be embarrassed because they don't understand all these offerings. Get them up to the scale of scaling up in their own skills before they have external directors on their boards. Government grants. Are you proactive in advising your clients about government grants? I've mentioned one, accelerating commercialisation. There's about another 500 of them around Australia. That's a service you could be offering to your clients. The Personal Property Securities Register, I've already mentioned that. I think it's important that you have an awareness and you have an understanding of the clients that might potentially be exposed under this legislation. Remember, over $400 million has been lost in Australia by companies and businesses that did not register assets on the Personal Property Securities Register. And the biggest loss of all was sustained by the subsidiary of one of the world's top 100 business groups. And they lost $62 million through not registering an asset that they placed on someone else's property in Western Australia. Now, if a company that's part of a huge corporate group worldwide can make that mistake, so can your clients. And again, I don't think you'd like to be having that conversation tomorrow morning with a client who comes to you and tells you that he's just been told that a liquidator has seized an asset, irrespective of what the value is. Research and development. I briefly mentioned that before. There's around 14,000 companies a year normally participate in the research and development scheme. I think it's realistic to expect that that figure is going to be considerably higher over the next couple of years because of what's happened in the lockdowns and work from homes. I think a lot of people would have been doing some tinkering and developing new concepts and new ideas. And they're going to need your assistance when they start thinking about, well, can we get a tax advantage out of this? There's processes that they need to follow. We've got full product package within ESS BIZTOOLS that our subscribers to our gold package can utilize. If you're interested, please contact me and I'll give you an overview on a webinar. The Export Market Development Grant. Now, this is the last year, the year just finishing, 2021 is the last year on the scheme that's been run for the last 7, 8, 9 years. And there's a new scheme starting from 1 July, but at this stage, most of you are only going to be worried about the scheme for the year ending 21 and getting that sorted out. Those grant applications have to be submitted by the 30th of November. But within ESS BIZTOOLS in the next few weeks, we will have our new product package, which looks at what happens in the Export Market Development Grant new operation from 1 July 2021. So great opportunities if you've got clients who are exporting. Management of costs. In a survey done by CCH a few years ago, when they asked SMEs to identify their biggest single business worry, this was the item that they put on top of the list, management of costs. How long since you sat down and talked to your clients about managing their costs? But when they were asked by independent consultants what was the biggest concern, that's what the consultants have indicated they got the most response to, management of costs. Business risks. Well, we've really learned over the last 18 months that a thing called a pandemic is a real risk. I remember putting pandemics into business planning strategies 8, 9 years ago and ever since. And I've had clients say, well, why would you have a pandemic and a business risk? Well, we've found out why, haven't we, in the last 18 months? And unfortunately, I think it's going to be here for some time. It's very important that you sit down and talk to your clients about the risks that they're potentially running within their business. What are the things that can cause real problems? Raising capital. I mentioned that a couple of times because it's a big issue for a lot of people. And as the accountant who is offering a range of diversified services, I think you need to know this whole concept of how your clients can raise capital within the amendments that have been made to the Australian law. Like the back of your hand, you need to be able to talk the talk so that they can get an understanding, because it's good work for you if you convince your client that you have a clear understanding and you can help them. Business plan, we've talked about that enough. So there's some of the products. I think you need to have thought about all those type of things first and have identified the key ones that you're going to be implementing within your firm. We then got the marketing tools that ESS BIZTOOLS has available. The SME Needs Analysis is a document which has been produced to encourage your client to open up a bit and say, yes, I'd like to know more about debtors days outstanding, or what's this personal property securities register? Or if I'm going to appoint my grandson to my board, what training does he need within corporate governance? We produce a Business Plus monthly newsletter, which our subscribers badge with their name and details and send to their clients. There's always 6, maybe 8 articles which are targeted at different types of businesses, startups, people doing research and development, people like tradies, people who are offering credit and other activities, so that you can follow through and have a conversation with those people and let them know that you can offer a range of services. Your website should include articles that back up the type of services your firm can provide. Direct communications, also very important. That might be through a seminar or a webinar, or just going and having a cup of coffee with a client. Social media, why not put regular posts weekly, every couple of days, even daily, if you want to make that commitment. Post and a video. And we're making the posts and videos that we utilize in our associated consulting business to try to give our subscribers some ideas of some of the matters they might discuss. I'm just checking to see whether we've got any questions. We haven't got any questions. I hope that means I've answered all your questions. But if you think of any questions later on, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. Now, ESS BizTools can assist you. We have a business advisory services starter product package, which includes what I think is the key material to enable you to get started in this very important area. And if you want some of the other services which we've got available, you can subscribe to those packages later on. Debtors management, it's a huge problem. Australia's got the dubious title of having the worst or the longest debtors days outstanding in the world. Survival in difficult times. Every year, somewhere around Australia, there's groups of businesses or locations that are struggling to survive. When we originally wrote this material, we were looking at drought, bushfires, floods, cyclones. But then, of course, in the last 18 months, we've had COVID-19. So this is a series of 38 questionnaires that's linked back to our articles, which you can sit down and review a client's business and then supply them with comments, articles on how they might change, how they operate their business in certain areas. The tradies charge out rate calculator, which I referred to before, the retail pricing calculator, and the professional service firms charge out rate calculator. So you've got the big three that you're able to work with those clients. I don't know what percentage your clients are represented by those three categories, but I think it would be probably over 50% in a lot of firms. So you can get started. The business health checklist for 5 different industry groups, and that's covering clothing retail, commercial building industry, pharmacy, supermarkets, and road transport. So that gives you a start. And this is more in depth than a benchmarking report because you're able to compare various figures from last month or last quarter within your own business or your own client's business. Business advice, the SME Debtors Systems Manual. So this is a pre-prepared manual that you can edit the templates, badge it with your name and the client's name, and then the person who's got the dubious honor of being the person in charge of debtors has got a written system to guide him or her in their day-to-day work functions. Because a lot of them don't get given anything, do they, in writing? They get hand-me-down notes and stickers on the sides of computers or filing cabinets. That's not very good. And they're controlling this investment in an asset which is quite large in a lot of small businesses. And they have debtors days outstanding in some cases of 70, 80, 90, 105 days, which means a lot of cash is getting tied up in the business. We got client seminars and webinars. We've actually recorded over 40 client seminars and webinars. In this package, you've got access to 12 of them. You put the badging up and away you go. You can run them. Just do a rehearsal first. We've got client mentoring and coaching modules. You get 4 of them. There's about 12 in the total package, but you get 4 of them to use in this starter package. And this is a series of information that you're sending to clients over a weekly or fortnightly basis for 3 or 4 times to educate the client on the type of services that you can provide to them. because most clients think you can only do tax returns. So we need to help you to educate them so that they know. There's 343 papers in this starter package out of about 560 in total, which we have. Now you badge the papers, you can sell them if you wish to your clients, or you can give them away, but it's advice to the clients on a range of matters. About 60 different subject headings are covered in these 343 papers. It makes you look good because you've badged them. It's coming from your firm. Business advisory services training. It's very important that the team is trained. This is different to taxation. So the training, we've broken it into 13 modules. And we'd want you to work your way through that. It's all there. The Business Plus newsletter that I referred to before. Now, the upfront discount price that we're offering this for at present for 12 months is only $999, $999. That's a 50% discount. Last week, it was $2,100, $999 for 12 months. And that includes GST. And that offer is available until the 30th of July. To register, please go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au, and click on what we have there, subscription for business advisory services starter package. And then we'll be contacting you shortly thereafter to arrange for your first complimentary one-on-one mentoring session, because you get 2 of those, 2 1-hour mentoring sessions. Do you want more information? Well, please go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au, or send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au, and I'll get back to you. Or if you want to, you can telephone me, 1-800-232-088. Good luck with your firm's activities in this new financial year, 21-22. And hopefully we're all going to get over these problems of border shutdowns and COVID-19 rearing its ugly head every few days. But remember, out of all this, please, it is time for business advisory services. Your clients are looking for it. Now is the time to deliver. Have a great day. Goodbye. And I hope that you all have a great and very successful new financial year, 21-22. Thank you.